Welcome to Currency Cast. Should treasurers stick to a transactional approach to their role, or should they broaden their horizons and act as strategic advisors to other parts of the organization? Welcome to Currency Cast. My name is Agustin McKinley. I'm the senior financial writer at Cantox and your host. In this episode, we have the pleasure to welcome Pieter de Kiewit, a well-known Treasury headhunter and entrepreneur. Pieter, a very warm welcome to you, and thank you for joining us in this episode of Currency Cast.
Thank you for having me. Love to be on this side of the table because it's sometimes I am a guest, like a session of yours, but also I'm very often in your role moderating sessions at Treasury Excel or elsewhere. So it's very interesting to be on the other side of the table here.
That's right. Look, Pieter, can you start by introducing yourself to the audience?
Of course, happy to do so. So my original job and also my current passion is be a recruiter. I love making the match between a company and a new employee. Could be interim, could be permanent. Already over 30 years ago, I stepped into this job type. And after about 5 years, I worked on my first corporate treasury assignment, KLM at the time, and the rest is history. Currently, I'm in my company Treasurer Search. We are 13 currently and recruiting people in corporate treasury roles around the world, but mainly in the Benelux and in Germany.
All right. Now let's start our discussion. We'll start with maybe some general topics, and we'll go down to more specific questions. In a recent piece on the travel industry and in treasury operations in the travel industry, Pieter, we read that treasurers should move beyond the boundaries of the finance department to act as more of strategic advisors to the CFO, to the CEO, to other parts of the organization. I'd like your views on that, very generally first, and then with more details.
Yeah. Well, I do see what you mentioned there. The world is changing, org charts are changing, tasks are changing, and this leads to a situation where people have to step up. And that's partly based upon treasury expertise. So it makes, of course, sense if you talk about the travel industry and it's about payments and payment flows that the treasurer takes initiative. But there's a lot of other tasks that are not so well defined or that new that they are not put logically in any boxes. So I think it's a mixture of the skill set people have on the one hand, but also their personality, if they like to branch out, if they like to connect to other functionalities and all related and step into the new economy or other words that are used for this changing world.
Right, and I was about to ask you exactly that. Is that confined to specific industries where, for example, maybe payments play a more important role, or do you see it as maybe a broader trend here?
Well, it's a bit of a yes and no question. Of course, you mentioned the travel industry and Expedia. I saw the article. Of course, the impact is huge there, and there it's kind of unavoidable. But if you look at more traditional industries, also there the changes are quite prominent. So I think it depends. It's for all industries, but for some more than others, and also for all function types in treasury, cash management as well as risk management, FX risk management as well as funding are all changing a lot. So. Be it in e-commerce, be it in large energy projects or internationalization, globalization of other industries. I think the change is dominant and prominent everywhere.
Okay. All right. Now, Pieter, in a recent Treasury Excel webinar, you made the point that in some projects, treasurers fail to gain traction across the organization, and And that's interesting because you said that maybe due to their lingo, their jargon in terms of, I don't know, like things like cash working capital management, discounted cash flow valuation, sales to asset ratios, and
Mhm.
all of that. Can you elaborate on this point, the jargon, the lingo in your words?
Yeah, what I see a lot is that the and that's not for every treasurer, but a lot of treasurers are quite fond of their position, and that's of course good if you love your job. But that kind of results in staying in their own box. And we touch upon something that is researched quite thoroughly by psychologists, but not really a topic where in our part of the economy is talked a lot about, because you talk about what enthuses you, what drives you. And what you see in the Treasury population is that a lot of people working there are driven by their job content and not so much on, for instance, the impact they can have on their organization as a whole. So going into this funnel of treasury comes with talking a lot of the job and going deeper and deeper and deeper. And something that connects to the previous question is, if you want to have more impact, perhaps deeper is not always better, but a broader audience also makes sense. And then it's about, okay, are you driven as a person by having more impact and willing to connect to the rest of the world? And are you willing to pick up the skills that are necessary to connect to a CFO, to a sales guy, to a marketing person, to procurement? And that is not what you see a lot in the treasury community. And it's observed and everybody sees it, but change hasn't, let's say, set in, to put it like
Right,
that.
right. Well, that's really interesting that you mentioned, say, psychology when it comes to the role of the treasurer. A few days ago, we had the sad news of Daniel Kahneman,
Yeah.
so passing away, a pioneer in the field of psychology and economics. So,
Hmm.
and one of the biases that he mentioned is precisely this one, the insider bias, right? And I
Yeah.
think that that's one of the points you're mentioning. So it's nice to have this connection and this view of, well, perhaps why not exploring more the role of psychology.
Yeah.
Now, Peter, say that you're looking for a treasury position, a treasurer,
Mhm.
and say
Constantly.
that it's that's right. Say that it's based in Dubai, and the
Mhm.
person would need so debt capital markets experience in Europe.
Mhm.
That person should understand all the say the tax, the legal, the all of the other issues related to that. It should have experience with the world of investment banking. That's very demanding, isn't it?
Totally. Yeah, yeah. No, it's very demanding, and that's also why it's not easy to find someone. And that's a good thing, because otherwise my client wouldn't need me to find the right person. So yeah, it's a demanding position, indeed.
Right. Now, in one of your searches also, I see that you're looking for and I quote you here, a communicative corporate treasurer.
Mm.
So that
Mm.
now that begs at least two questions. Peter, first, define what is a communicative corporate treasurer for us.
Yeah. Well, nice question, and also nice to connect me to my own text, or that of my team. In this case, the communication part is being able to connect to the rest of the business. And the communication part is not necessarily the broadcasting part, which is part of the whole communication, but also the listening part, listening to what keeps your colleague awake at night. And that would be like the superficial approach. It's kind of a skills approach, like learning a trick. Okay, I learn how to listen, and I learn how to phrase a message that it's understood. very relevant and also interesting for people in their careers or hiring people to see if you can also go to the underlying message or the level a bit deeper, so to say. If you are driven still, like a lot of treasurers, by solving the puzzles, looking for the complexity, and then finding the solution to this equation, um, then listening and sending is a trick. And if you are driven by widening the audience for your treasury task, then perhaps you touch upon personality elements that are more relevant for a communicative treasurer who is much more of a business treasurer than, for instance, a risk mitigation expert. So it's very interesting for us as a recruiter to find out why, dear client, are you looking for a candidate who has communication skills? And there I can talk for hours, so to say.
Well, but yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk. Would you define those as, well, to use a very common term, soft skills, as opposed to others say hard skills like you mentioned, cash management or risk management or raising capital. So do you like
Yeah.
that term, the soft skills, like you
Well,
mentioned,
I'm not a
talking
big
and listening?
I'm not a big fan of this phrase soft skills, because it implies that it's not measurable, that it's not a real skill. You've got your real skills like cash management,
Right,
and you've got your soft skills, which are kind of lower level, not that important.
Right, that implies a hierarchy, right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
and you find it a bit
Exactly.
artificial, is that right?
Well, I'm not sure if artificial is the word, but it's a bit like you've got hard science like physics and mathematics, and then you've got soft science like psychology, which is kind of an amateur science. But I think that the setting defines what's most important. So in some cases, indeed, the hardcore mathematical skills are dominant, but in many cases, the technical skills are not the dominant, because you will see that any treasurer is 5 times as smart as his colleagues when it concerns treasury, but the real impact is much more on including your colleagues in the road to success, including treasury. So I think it touches upon, if you think a person is essential for the success of your treasury organization, which of course, hey, given my job, I think it is. Okay, how can you predict if you want a new person in your team, if this person brings the soft, hard other skills that will bring you the success you're looking for? And that forces people into a situation that they have to think about what does this person do over here? Can I predict if he or she can do this task successful, and what can I measure right now in this meeting, in a CV, in an online assessment, wherever, that will predict success in the task at hand? And I'm a bit split here, because on the one hand you see that in many cases it's an amateur hour. People wing job interviews when they interview candidates. They trust their gut. Statements like, I know already in the first 1 or 2 minutes if I will hire somebody or not. That really is not what I'd love to hear.
Right.
On the other hand, if everybody would pay attention to recruitment and finding the right person with the right methodology, perhaps there weren't as many assignments for me. So yeah, I think that the people, staff, jobs deserve more attention, not because it's philanthropy, but because your organization will be better for it and more successful.
Right. Okay. Now let's discuss maybe all the types of skills. We're discussing with Pieter de Kiewit here the requirements for a position in Treasury, right? And let's discuss a little bit the perhaps the tech side a little bit more. There's a recent piece on Treasury Management International discussing TAAB. That's Treasury as a business. Now, I usually don't like much buzzwords, but I admit this one is pretty clever, right? So to describe these, what we've been discussing here, the new situation where the treasurers are placed, and one point in that at one point in that article, there is this idea that there might be, and that's a potential problem, is legacy ERP systems in different parts of the organization, and that's going to be a challenge, right? And the piece goes on saying that there are other skills there that are going to be required, like knowledge of treasury management systems. What is your position here? Because if I remember well, I think that's also some of the demands that are placed to you as a recruiter. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Typically, we also record on the people we get to know over time, and those are quite a few, and we keep in touch. What TMSs they worked with before. So TMS expertise is a required skill, and it very often comes up that a client says it would be great. It hardly ever is a must-have to have Kyriba, Bellin, Nomentia, or any other TMS expertise. It is always a nice to have, and quite a few of our clients say, if you and that's not really nice to say, but it's the statement: if you know one, you know them all. If you can work with SAP, most likely you can relatively quickly learn how to work Oracle. What we notice much more recently, which I think is easily as interesting, is that it also goes the other way around. The labor market is really tight, and we have candidates who say, if this potential new employer of mine doesn't have a TMS and still works with, for instance, Excel,
right,
we won't come, because we don't want to work in an under-automated company where we have to do a lot of manual work.
right.
So TMS expertise is becoming kind of a given in the market, especially when you focus on company with a revenue over 1 billion and up. And of course, the smaller companies, the automation level is not as high, and that's where you see a kind of a bit of Excel or other systems in place. But TMS expertise is one of many aspects required.
Right. Now you mentioned, of course, spreadsheets, and that's a favorite subject to us here at Campus. We like to say that spreadsheet risk is, of course, one of the operational risks that is perhaps not discussed as widely as it should be. And we also think that the best way to, maybe not to eliminate, but to tame spreadsheet risk is knowledge of application programming interfaces, APIs, right? And what is your view? Do you see also this as a trend in treasury recruiting?
Well, not so much in recruiting. Of course, I see the dominance and the prominence of APIs. And I think there will be an increase of the use of those. So at a certain, let's say, conceptual level, everybody in recruitment, in treasury, should be aware of the concepts of an API and how it works. In our experience, be it an API, for instance, if it's about bank connectivity or a host-to-host or any other connectivity, if people have worked in one or the other environment with these types of connectivity, it's already fine. We hardly have clients who expect their staff to know, let's say, to go under the hood of an API and really know how to work it in all technology aspects. So I think from a user perspective, which you might as Cantox people might kind of like perhaps, is the transitioning from a over automated, integrated situation where everything is connected, um, as mentioned, for instance, through host to host connectivity to all kinds of other versions, mostly using API. I think that transition is experienced as relatively smooth.
Right.
So knowing that these APIs exist and perhaps also expand the possibility might be good, but it's not a real recruitment aspect.
Right. Okay. Really interesting. Well, we've discussed that, right? The APIs is the lifeblood of new solutions like currency management automation that we
Mm,
provide here at Cantos. Now, Peter, let's broaden a little bit the discussion and take into account the also another aspect that is the, the fact that treasurers and finance teams in general have to contend with a growing number of stakeholders, both internal, as we discussed, and some external. I've seen an academic paper recently showing, calculating the fact that the higher the score of a company in corporate social responsibility, the more it will be inclined to hedge its exposure, be it foreign exchange exposure, interest rate risk, even commodity price risk, and the hedge intensity, that is the use of derivatives, also goes higher the higher the level of corporate social responsibility. To what extent, and that's the question, right? Are treasurers involved or should be involved in this conversation?
well, they should be involved because it's risk management, and of course, treasurers are risk managers. Um, as your point as to the CSR connectivity to, for instance, hedging strategies, I think that goes beyond CSR because a company that is that professional that they want to invest in these types of reporting or methodology, those are the companies who are investing in next level risk management. That's what they're doing. And it then kind of automatically, in my opinion, goes that if they want to think about the potential risk, they also think about potential risk mitigation. And the obvious in risk mitigation is for a lot of treasurers all kinds of hedging strategies, whereas others who are not as conscious about all kinds of risks also do not think about risk mitigation and do not use the services of Cantox or any hedging strategy. So I would say that goes beyond, let's say, the acronym of CSR. It's much more of a, are you willing to invest as a company in such an important aspect as risk management? Yeah, that would be my opinion about that.
All right. Now, Peter, we've come across recently a range of articles, papers, and discussions about the ascending CFO this time. So those CFOs that aspire to become CEOs, and there's lots of them. There's more and more of them. So people are putting forward their skills, their risk management skills, the knowledge of almost every aspect of the business, their visibility, their role in crisis episodes, all of this as elements as important elements to climb the ladder further and become a CEO. Can we make the same case as you're a specialist in treasury management for treasurers and becoming CFOs, or is it another discussion?
Well, it's a discussion where we can invest a lot of time in. So I will try to give you first the shorter answer. I think that depends on your personality and your drivers. So if you are a super specialist, then it's totally fine to remain a super specialist, and there's a demand for that. I used to have a boss who would say, and there was a boss in recruitment who say, if you study dentistry, you know your job at 65. You will be a dentist, and there's nothing wrong about that. Nobody will ask you, why don't you be a CEO of a dentistry firm? No, you are a dentist. Well, the same goes for a treasurer. If you want to be a specialist, remain a specialist. If you think, okay, there's more to life than being a treasurer and a specialist, professional life, I say, I want to have more impact. I want to become a CFO. That's totally fine. It's not an easy path to go, but it's doable. It's done before. But if you want to do that, then you should act upon that, because it will not automatically come to you. So this would be the short answer.
All
And if
right.
you let me, I will talk hours about that.
All
But
right.
that's not what you want, I suppose.
Well, we'll have, I'm sure, the opportunity to do it another time. Now,
Mhm.
Peter, I really thank you for this discussion. We've been through a lot of topics. We started out with the idea of maybe treasurers moving beyond the pure financial department into the role of strategic advisors. You introduced, and I thought it was really, really interesting, this psychological aspect when viewing and assessing the the role of treasurers, what skills they have, what are the communication skills in particular that you stressed, and we went on to discuss so relationships with external, internal stakeholders, and more things. Is there, Peter, something that you would like to add?
Well, a final thing, and that's something that came up. It comes up constantly in the big events. It is our responsibility as Treasury community. There's talk about why doesn't the world see how great Treasury is, and
Uh-huh.
we all see, if we are professional treasurers, what kind of an impact can we have? We can reduce cost, we can create opportunities, we can mitigate risk. But bringing that message across is not the task of the outside world. It's our task as Treasury community to think about, okay, how do we convince the rest of the world by telling the right story, using the right words, how great it would be if FX management, Treasury management in general, would be executed better. So this is my call to everybody in the Treasury community: go out there and talk to non-treasurers to increase our impact, because I think we can.
That's right. That's absolutely in line also with our message. We always say, look, risk mitigation, of course, it's fine, and that's what we do. But the real purpose is, well, in our case, in particular, to embrace currencies, to drive growth and valuation, because that's ultimately what counts. Pieter de Kiewit, I'm Treasury Community Catalyst and Entrepreneur. Thank you very much for your participation today in Currency Cast, and I hope we'll see you soon again.
Thank you very much for having me.